Coming up next, MLR and USA Rugby chatter with Steve Lewis and Ronan Nelson. Brought to you by Friends of the British Council. Hey everybody, welcome back to Rugby Wrap-Up. Matt McCarthy talking rugby here in the Fantasy Sports Network Studio 34 in New York City. And I have the debonair Steve Lewis here on the set with me. And we have Ronan Nelson calling in from San Diego. Gentlemen, welcome.
Good afternoon, Matthew.
Good afternoon, Stephen. Good afternoon, Ronan.
Good afternoon, Ronan.
Thanks, Matt.
Let's dive right into American rugby. And before we talk American Major League Rugby, let's get a little skinny on some of the stuff that's going on with USA Rugby, because you are indeed a congressman and a person that's been instrumental in some of the change.
Okay, well, first off, Army women won their fourth tournament out of 5. They're 23-1 for the spring, so Army Women's 7's going well. Secondly, Battle in New York this week, Old Blue versus New York Athletic Club, 12 noon, Bakerfield, Saturday.
You mean that's not the Battle of New York that I'm talking about with the Village Lions and the New York Rugby Club?
That's a whole different battle, whole different weapons. But, yeah, on to USA Rugby and things of import, as you stress. Probably the biggest news coming out is the appointment of Ross Young as interim CEO of USA Rugby. So with Dan Payne migrating or changing jobs, he's now working for World Rugby as the Rugby Americas North manager, which is a pretty important job and a good thing that we have an American in there.
It's the best gig on the planet, isn't it?
Yeah. Sure. It's the one I wanted.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Ross is the interim CEO, and you couldn't have a better guy or a better qualified guy to do this role at this tricky time. Ross comes most recently as the CEO from Atavus. He was the CEO of Atavus, but he has a long record in European and professional rugby. Ex-CEO of Harlequins, he was also instrumental in the England World Cup, and just a skilled and experienced administrator, good Scotsman, and just a good rugby guy. So he's going to be terrific in that
Scotsman?
job. There are a few Rangers supporters. So that's the first thing. Obviously, we're in a bit of a tricky time right now. There are some delicate financial matters and issues going on.
You may or may not be privy to?
I can't really disclose much of it. There's some still delicate financial negotiations, but we're in a bad spot. I think everyone knows that. There are some plans in place to get us out of that spot, so we have to let them play out. Mm-hmm. We have some talented and very invested people, both financially and emotionally, such as Mark Lambourne and John Bobbitt. They're kind of working this thing, and we have to sort of let them get on with it and put our trust in them, which we do.
Okay, so ultimately it's going to be a good thing. And for the folks at home that might not know this about Ross Young, he's tall.
Indeed.
He's a very good guy.
He is.
And he came over here as a consultant, vowing never to move again for rugby to his wife, if I'm not mistaken. And it was Serevi was what Atavus used to be. And he came over to be a consultant and look in the business, and they talked him into not only staying, but taking over as CEO of Serevi. And he was the one that really drove the change of the name of the brand to Atavus, right?
Yeah, and so his primary responsibility is, as well as navigating this tricky moment that we're in, but really pushing the Rugby World Cup Sevens in San Francisco. So he's shuttling between there and Boulder, and he'll do a terrific job in that. And it's important for everyone that is a success. Irrespective of your opinions about the USA Rugby Board, mine are well known. Irrespective of your opinions about the World Cup Sevens, but they have to succeed, and so we have to get behind Ross and help him with that.
Right. I'm getting some people throwing me some complaints that maybe there's a conflict of interest about him being part of Atavus and then also being the interim and potential long-term CEO of USA Rugby.
It could look like that, and but it's not. So Ross is obviously an honourable man. He's going to do the right thing. He has divested himself of those responsibilities with Atavus. So there is no conflict of interest, and we should just embrace him and support him.
All right. Speaking of supporting him, Perry Baker. Any words on Perry Baker, because he is a big part of that Sevens puzzle, specifically if his injury is long term.
Yeah, not sure actually. I mean, it was either shoulder or head. I haven't been able to get an update. Obviously, it's a big issue. He's a big weapon. I mean, Carlin came on day 2 and day 1 and played very well. It was an interesting weekend for the US Sevens. Singapore Sevens, they finished 9th. And normally, you want to be in the quarterfinals, you want to be in the cup rounds. But comparatively, they did quite well. They actually moved up one spot in the rankings to 5th. They responded to the adversity well on day 2, which is important. They bloodied a lot of young guys, Malone Al-Jabouri, Cody Melfi, Matina, lots of guys getting more time. So building depth, that's a positive. The way they responded, that's a positive. But obviously the big question mark's Perry.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Ronan Nelson's brief recap of last weekend and our predictions. We'll be right back.
Been blind since I was 4. And I've never seen a beer commercial or a beer label. None of that stuff influences me. I drink beer because of the taste. And my beer's Pabst Blue Ribbon. It has the taste and the flavor.
What do you think's on the label?
I think there's a naked woman riding on a unicorn, jumping over fire. Oh, that's good beer.
If you're in New York City and want to watch some great rugby, have some great food, and some great times, go to the world's best rugby pub, the Pig and Whistle on West 36th Street.
Hey everybody, we are back at Rugby Wrap-Up, talking rugby in New York City at Studio 34, the Fantasy Sports Network. Steve Lewis with me in the studio, Ronan Nelson calling in. And Ronan, we understand you have figured out your difficulties, so give us a very brief recap on last weekend's matches.
Thanks, Matt. My apologies. I can't actually get my video feed to work right now, so we're just going to have to dive straight into this Houston-Austin matchup. The first Major League Texan derby was a very exciting affair. 50 points to 38, a lot of scoring on the board, but Houston never looked like they were going to lose this match. They were 14-0 up within 10 minutes, and Austin was always 1 foot behind. They scored many times on the counterattack, but every time Austin scored, Houston would counter straight back with another try. Austin, a little more disappointing in their defensive effort than I thought they were going to be. They'll improve throughout the season, but Houston looking like a team that they were supposed to be going into that first New Orleans matchup.
So, Steve, you just heard his recap of the Sabercats-Austin match. Personally, I had seen Austin prior up in Glendale, and I thought if they could get maybe a couple of 3 practices under their belts as a unit with all the new faces, that they might surprise the Sabercats, especially after they had the disappointing loss to NOLA, but I was wrong.
You're wrong. So Austin, actually this game wasn't as close as the score ended up being, 50-38. Houston had it pretty much in hand. So Austin are 0-2. They've had some, injuries pre-season. We discussed like the front row, front 5. They've been scrambling. They brought some guys in, a couple of guys from New York, Mike Brown from Old Blue, Ross Deacon, Marcus Walsh from the AC. Todd Clever's back. But once they get their full complement back, I spoke with Pedri Vandenberg this morning. He seems to think they're going to be okay.
Pedri, is he going to stay in the cleats?
I believe so. A hamstring injury, which is something that only we backs ought to get, not forwards, certainly not geriatric forwards like Pedri.
Right.
But good on him. He said his body was okay other than that. So there's some life in the old dog left there. He's an experienced player, obviously. He knows the right angles.
All right, Ronan, give us the second one.
All right, let's move into the second match of the weekend. Seattle taking on the Glendale Raptors in Seattle in front of another sold-out crowd. The Raptors, even without Ben Landry and Connor Cook, were able to pull out a great win on the road and suffocate what had been an incredibly strong Seattle Seawolves forward pack and set piece. The Raptors were all over the park against the Seawolves. They were on offense in the first half. They were on defense in the second half. They were playing absolutely great interplay between their forwards. The Seawolves did their best to be able to counterattack as often as they could, but they couldn't find the opportunities. And when they did have the opportunities, they made mistakes. It's something that will be fixed come next week for the Seawolves. They're one of the stronger teams in this Major League Rugby season, and the matchup come later in the season between these two teams will be fantastic.
Guys, this was a good one. And Seattle was at home with their rowdy fans that make noise when the opposing kicker is kicking. And also, you had Glendale with guys that were suspended, right?
Yeah, as Ronan mentioned, and you've alluded to, both Ben Landry and Connor Cook were both red carded for dangerous tackles last week. Both got 3-match suspensions, which is a significant part of the season. So
Do you
yeah,
agree with those suspensions?
I thought they might have been appealed and reduced a little bit. I mean, I thought they were
Sending a message to the guys?
Perhaps that's what they were doing in the league, and maybe that's a good thing. I mean, they were red card offenses, but it's hard to say. That's the entry level for that type of offense, so can't really complain. It's dangerous, so it has to be punished. But anyway, so Glendale, strength and depth. This was a tricky fixture, playing up there against a hostile crowd, and I'm all for Seattle fans booing kickers if they want to do it. I think it's good that we develop local identities, and if that's their thing, that's their thing. So Seattle performed well. This was a tight one. Glendale, though, toughed it out. 19-15 on the road, missing key guys. Glendale still looking the cream of the crop.
Zach Finolio, the Eagle teacher / pharmaceutical salesman that you coached or have known since he was a wee lad, was playing flanker and then moved to hooker.
Yeah, he was never a wee lad, but yeah, coached him as a schoolboy. Great player, great guy. Started, as you say, flanker, moved in a hooker. So Glendale have got strength and depth, and as to say, they are the preseason favorite, and with good reason.
All right, and Ronan, give us a skinny on that last match.
All right, so the final match of the weekend came between the San Diego Legion and the Utah Warriors. The Legion pulling off a 31-24 victory to be able to take the win in front of their home crowd. Utah made the trip down to San Diego for their first Major League Rugby matchup and looked strong in many facets of the match, but it was the injection of 5 USA Eagles into the San Diego Legion side that really gave the home team the victory. They were on the board within the first 2 minutes and pushed Utah to their limits in the first half. Utah had a good mid-game comeback, especially after halftime, but the fitness levels of the Utah Warriors really showed, and San Diego was able to capitalize in the final quarter of the match and be able to take their first victory of the season.
So, Ronan, you and I talked about this off camera a little bit, and we talked about it a couple of times. Was this a product, again, of Utah not being fit? Because...
So Utah, struggling a little bit, little undercooked coming into the season in terms of their conditioning preseason, I think, and that kind of showed. They also had an absolute nightmare with their line-out, particularly in the first half. They couldn't hit a barn door.
Couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat.
There you go.
It's a baseball term in America, baseball term.
So they came out on the wrong side of the ledger. San Diego, I thought, were improved. They sorted out most of their scrummaging issues. Not perfect, and they're still not going to be strong there, but they got to hang on there.
That's because Hawkins was on this show. That's why they won. Get that, MLR people out there? Seattle? Everybody else out there? Get on the show. Sorry.
So that means an Austin win then if Drew's on the show coming up.
Yeah.
But San Diego, weapons all across the park. I thought Nate Augsburger was back to his sharpest best. He had a really good game. I liked Leader at fly half. I mean, I'm a big fan of Seema, but it seemed Leader was preferred, as a red-headed Irishman, was preferred to Seema this weekend. Seema's on the bench. So that was interesting. Mikey Teo wasn't there. Osley was back. Matches is there. They got weapons in that back division, San Diego, and if they can produce enough ball, they will be okay. But they got the win.
And don't rule out that old speedster.
See, just waiting for him to light it up. Didn't get quite the opportunity.
What was pretty cool in week 1 was watching the matchup of Matthew Drew Turner and Nguyen, right?
A couple of rapid veterans.
All right, so let's get to predictions, and we're basically out of time. So, Ronan, game 1.
In the first match, I'm going to ride the wave that NOLA made in their very first match against the Houston Sabercats. They're going to roll on to victory for their second of the season.
Okay, so New Orleans and Austin. Steve?
New Orleans, away win.
All right, I'm going with New Orleans, despite the fact that I think Austin's going to be the best 0-3 team, because NOLA Nate knows. Nate Osborne predicted his team was going undefeated. He's undefeated 2 weeks into the season. All right, next one.
In the second match of the weekend, San Diego takes on Houston. I'm going to go San Diego, given they are at home. They've already played Houston in San Diego once before. I think they're going to be able to watch a good amount of film. They're going to be able to be more cohesive this time around. I'm going to give San Diego the edge, 1 or 2 points maximum.
All right, Steve. Sabercats?
Got to disagree there. Got to disagree. This is a Friday night game, Torero, which is a beautiful facility in San Diego, incidentally. I'm going for the home team. I think they survive up front, go well behind.
I think I'm going to have to agree with you, and it's going to make a lot of Houston Sabercats fans unhappy if their team goes 1-2, because they seem to be the favorites out of the gate in terms of preparation at least. And I'm going to go along with that prediction. And the final match, Ronan.
And in the third match of the weekend, we touched on it already. Utah's fitness level is just not there yet. Glendale is going to walk into Utah. They're going to be the favorites, and they are going to come away with the victory by, I'm going to say, 10 points or more.
This is, again, I think the depth of Glendale, but you go first.
So Glendale on the road again. I'm going to pick them to win again. Utah at home. Maybe this is an opportunity for them to, make a statement, lay down a marker, as it were. But I'm going to go with Glendale. I just don't see anyone getting past them.
Here's a dumb question, but is this a Rocky Mountain Derby?
It is indeed Salt Lake, Denver.
Rocky Mountain Derby, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm going with Steve on this one.
Good. You got to go with the Denver team.
I'm going with Rugby Town USA's team on the road in Glendale. And on that note, we are out of time, so we got to go. But Stephen, thank you for coming on. Ronan, thank you for calling in. I'm Matt McCarthy for Rugby Wrap Up here at the Fantasy Sports Network, Studio 34, talking rugby in New York City.